Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Season 2, Episode 23, Ponyville Confidential. Now, this is the episode in which the Cutie Mark Crusaders decide to go into being journalists in order to get their cutie marks and then end up being gossip columnists, which ends up causing a lot of problems. But they learn their lesson. Now, reinstall Stellaris right now, or else... Oh, sorry. Yes, this is the Gabby Gums episode, if that helps. This episode was written by M.A. Larson. I actually have finally decided to start using a spreadsheet in order to keep track of authors, since obviously, a document isn't going to work at a certain point. Because it's me. I'm organized. What do you want from me? Okay. There we go. Alright, so where do I begin with this one? I do like this episode, obviously. I was looking forward to it, walking into it. It's one of those episodes that's more interesting the more you think about it, I think is the way I want to put that. I do also have to admit something, actually. When I first saw this on the list, this isn't actually the episode I thought it was. The episode I'm thinking of, I believe, comes much later. It's the episode in which Rarity is setting up a boutique. I forget where. And all sorts of problems happen, right? And it's like, oh god, what do we do? And then there's this interview about all the problems, and everyone's nervous about her reading it. You know what I'm talking about? That's actually the episode I thought this was at first. And as soon as I saw the beginning, I was like, oh, no, this is the Gabby Gums episode. Okay, my bad. What is that episode, actually? Now I'm kind of curious. Season 4? Here, let's pull up Season 4 really quick. What do we got here? Castlevania, during that. It's not Rarity Takes Manhattan. That's another one. No, that's not it. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Point being... Whoops, this is Season 3. I need Season 2. Point being, I thought it was that episode, and it's not. Instead, it's the Gabby Gums episode. Sorry, I'm getting way off topic. Let's round this back up. So, they get the newspaper, and naturally the first thing they think of is, hey, I've got it! Let's go ahead and make newspaper nests and newspaper boats and newspaper packing material. Everything other than actually making a newspaper. Now, that joke is a lot funnier in 2020 than it probably was about 10 years ago. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Weods. If you don't get the joke, I mean, how many of you read the newspaper? Yeah, what's a newspaper? My niece is currently growing up in an environment where the newspaper is such an outdated piece of nothing that she doesn't even look at it. I don't think she ever has. Fantasy Star, you got it. And thank you very, very much, Savacom. Like, newspapers are still made. Not sure why. Anywho, what is newspaper but tortured wood? So, this leads me to... So, this episode is surprisingly well written, despite the fact that it seems like it isn't, because most of what happens is extremely realistic. So let's start with the first thing. Cheerilee basically says, here's your new editor-in-chief, and then walks away. Now, if you're not getting that, how many of you are actually on school paper teams? I was. Several times. It was actually a very common thing for me. In fact, I still have some of those to this day. Just for nostalgia's sake or memory's sake or whatever you want to call it. Memorabilia. I point this out, though, because one of the most common things, and this was actually told to us even as children, was everything that goes into that kid, that student paper or that school paper always goes through a teacher or a principal or some kind of adult. Why? Well, because duh. Because otherwise they could just print whatever. stupid things or fart jokes or cuss words or whatever. So you always have someone who is basically the supervising editor who goes through it to make sure everything's kosher, right? The fact that Cheerilee just walks away from it? What? Now, the interesting catch, though, is there was another school, which I didn't actually go to, back when this would have been 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, or in that range. And at that point in time, there was another school which did exactly what Cheerilee does here. And what happened is basically the same general problem. Like, it wasn't this. In fact, it was actually worse than what is this. But of course, real life is worse than My Little Pony. But yeah, no, it was the exact problem you would imagine from not giving oversight to a kid's newspaper. So that didn't go well. And that was the first thing I thought of when I see Cheerilee just walk out the room. It's like, where are you going? What? Anyways. So, moving on. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Cheerilee is the principal of Ponyville School, near as I can tell. Look at my notes. Oh, yeah. So, then Diamond Tiara shows up. Now, this is actually really interesting to me, because to my knowledge, this is the first episode that starts characterizing Diamond Tiara. Up until now, she's been the bully. That's it. One note, nothing else. This episode starts adding in a couple of little addendum details to her characterization. You'll notice one of the first things she mentions is her ambition, which makes sense for someone named Diamond Tiara, who is the daughter of Filthy Rich. I bring that up because if you pay attention, despite how she's being portrayed, she does that same voice she usually does to try and make her seem more like a villainous character. But if you pay attention to everything she's doing, nothing she's doing is actually wrong at the beginning. In fact, she does several things right. She wants to turn the press into something more useful that more people are going to read. She doesn't want to have any more namby-pamby stories, which was the name of the previous editor. Haha. She even does something very correct with regards to the editing perspective, and that is, I want you to go photograph everything. Now, if you don't get the point there, anybody who's worked in editing, sound editing, video editing, or photo editing will tell you, you always want more raw material than you need. Always. You can always edit it down to what you actually need. But if you're low, you can't just make new footage happen. You always want more than you need. That's something I learned way, way, way back in school and has proven true ever since. That's like one of the most basic rules of creative works in general. That's even true for like writing, right? It's easier to pare down a story and just edit out sections of it than it is to go in and write new sections in. Yeah, exactly. So she has ambition and she does several things right. I was a little surprised by that. Moving on. So then they go out. Couple little neat little things. So Scootaloo goes to the baby nest of bird. The first thing I noticed was that's the nest that they actually made earlier in the episode. Nice little touch. The second note is this, I believe, is the first time they've actually drawn attention to the fact that Scootaloo cannot fly. We've actually mentioned this a couple times before, but I believe this is the first time the show has really highlighted the fact that she is incapable of flight. Because she actually tries twice, and as Raskor clearly points out, she had to climb up the tree to get there and take the photo. Now, I don't believe they really showcase the fact that she is, physically disabled at this point, that she literally cannot fly, that she's stunted in her growth yet. But I think the idea was already there at this point, especially since we've seen foals flying before. We've already seen the flashback with Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy, if nothing else. And apparently it was Faust's plan that she is handicapped. I believe you. I believe you. I don't have as much behind-the-scenes material for this show as I do most of my shows, so... It's just interesting because this is the first time it's up there for the viewer. As I've said before, I like that. I do like the idea of her being handicapped and them doing something with that. And I like the fact that it's really low-key rather than it being constantly the main focus of her character. This is just my opinion as a creator and as a viewer, but I don't like it when the handicapped person's main character trait is the fact that they're handicapped. I actually complained about that over on Deep Space Nine, if you guys would remember. Yeah, that's true. We saw pound cake flying. That's very true. So, hi, Sean. Anyways, moving forward. Yeah, look how this. Anyways, that's also true, Savacom. Very true. Yeah, nobody treats Scootaloo any less for the fact that she's handicapped. Which, let's be honest, that's kind of how it should be. So, I pulled a couple of direct quotes from the episode here. So they take these news stories to Diamond Tiara, and this is when Diamond Tiara starts to be a little more villainous. I don't know what you call this, but it sure isn't news. That right there. Oh man, God, that's kind of a timeless message, ain't it? I know a lot of people complain about news media nowadays, including me, but that goes back a ways. that is not a new problem. Drama sells. This episode shows that. And it's true in real life, too. There's a reason I usually try to mentally make the distinction between news, which is information, and news media, which is not. Yeah, the Cuban Missile Crisis was literally made worse by news media. I'm not going to go into that, but look it up. I'm not joking. It's also worth noting that a lack of communication was part of the problem. But the point is that news media made up stuff, literally presented lies, which would then be found out by intelligence agencies, which would then send them back to certain countries, and that literally made things worse. Just, yeah, it was a mess. So yeah, Diamond Tiara wanted clicks, exactly right. And there's even this wonderful bit here, because, yeah, you won't believe. I was going to say, the exact moment I'm recording this, news media is literally making things worse right now. I could rant about this for so long, but this topic comes up enough that I think I've kind of already tread this ground enough. All I'm going to say is, I do really like that this episode tried to nail something that is a adult topic, which is probably most of my favorite stuff from MLP in general. And they tackle stuff that is real life applicable to someone who's, not a child. It's something that is, as I say, an adult topic. As I call it, not, what most people mean when they say adult themes. So, what happens is they go ahead and they find Snips and Snails. And it's like, hey, there's bubble gum and they're stuck, and isn't it embarrassing? Now, this is an important thing that a lot of fiction will do. It's not actually the slippery slope argument, because that the slippery slope fallacy actually refers to something else. But this is effectively the slippery slope, because the first thing that happens is no one's hurt. Yeah, this is a form of escalation. Very, very good and very common thing. There's no one's hurt by their initial publishing. Everyone wants to buy the funny article about Snips and Snails who got the bubblegum off. They're just happy to be in the paper. And they're like, look, we got we shaved off all our fur or whatever, and we got off the bubblegum. They even try to get into the paper later when they're like, hey, look, we're stuck again. No one's hurt. Everyone's happy. Success, right? This is what I usually refer to as A to Z. And you guys have probably heard me talk about this concept many times. In case you haven't, though, just to reiterate very briefly, jumping from A to Z is a big jump that most people wouldn't make. But A to B, well, that's just right there. B to C, it's just a little jump. It's not a big issue. C to D. So, this then leads to Diamond Tiara saying, I want all of the embarrassing private moments when people think they're alone. There's a word for that. It's called paparazzi. What I find funny is this has literally come up yesterday in our streams during the Ace Attorney series. We actually talked about the problem with paparazzi and stalking, and how, to put this as nicely as possible, it's a bad thing. Like a really, really bad thing. And I just found there's amusement because we literally just talked about this. Paparazzi, just to make sure I'm getting my definitions out here nice and clear, is when people actively go out of their way to invade people's privacy in order to try and deliberately get misleading pictures and information on people in order to sell gossip. Now, I stress the word gossip because gossip, by definition, is not usually true, but also does not have to be true. Guys, I heard that Savicom dyes her hair. Now, that's gossip. And I used that on purpose. Sorry, Savicom. But I used that on purpose specifically because the whole point is it's something that's reasonable, something that you would have no problem believing, but something that I have absolutely no truth behind it. I have no idea if Savicom dyes her hair or not, and I don't care. But you get my point, right? Celestia likes cake. The mayor dyes her hair. But of course, the thing is, and I'll talk about this later, but they start off with things that are, reasonably truthful with just a little bit of a slant on them, and then they just segue into actual outright lies by the end of the episode. Which is also what the paparazzi does. By the way, I wonder if we ever see the mayor with just full pink. Yeah, the cakes are breaking up. We are? I believe that's the first outright lie that they tell in this episode. And then they just start telling more and more lies from that point onward. Anywho. Now, to continue to talk about how... Oh, I would love to have, like, super awesome, not standard hair. I'd go for shock white myself, but I'm getting off topic. And then like maybe a beard that's really thick looking, and then maybe get green eyes, and then I could blink. Oh, sorry. No, the point here, no goatee. I did have blue hair. That wasn't a wig. That was dyed. It came out the most wonderful shade. I'm getting off topic. So, what the episode does next is actually, again, very smart. What happens is Rarity is walking around, and she's like, whoops, I accidentally opened up Sweetie Belle's thing. Ooh, I should totally peep. I'm going to sneak in and see what she has to see. Oh, hey, there's her thing. Oh, this is funny. That is actually an extremely important point to be put down there, and one that Rarity herself brings up later. I'll cover that more later, but I like how they lay that domino in advance. So, I also want to point out that Rarity says something word for word, and I wrote this one down again. It's so much juicier than anything in the Ponyville Express. So, she runs off. They find out that everything's doing well, blah, 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 blah. And then they start posting gossip. They need to find their cutie marks, yada, yada. You'll notice that despite everything, the cutie marks themselves are actually one of the least focused on things in the episode. I think that's part of the reason I like this particular episode with the Cutie Mark Crusaders. Because even though the impetus is get our marks, the episode is then about the actions and the consequences, not the overemphasis focus on getting the marks, which... honestly, I'm already kind of tired of in Season 2, And then Lord knows that's going to keep happening in the future. Yeah, it doesn't retread the same damn territory. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put that, Rascor. The getting the cutie marks is the quest hook, not the quest itself. Anyways, I want to point out one thing really quick. As they're running around getting their stories, there's a shot of the market stall. And I was like, well, hang on a second. I actually ended up rewinding to watch it again. The asparagus stand is there from putting your hoof down. And it has tons of asparagus, like barrels of asparagus all of a sudden. I guess they learned their lesson from the last episode. Really minor point. I had to point that out. Anywho. So then they start publishing the things. Oh yeah, that absolutely counts as a continuity counter. We're probably going to have a few of those in this episode, actually. I'll go ahead and put one here. Boop. I'll update the HUD in a minute. I'm going to update my document first, because I think we're going to have a few. Anyways, so Then they go to the typewriters. Now, I had to rewind 3 times to get a good shot of it, but the typewriters have 3 buttons. Like, picture a typewriter, but instead of this, there's 1 button here, 1 button here, and the space bar. I could try to world build or speculate. I'm pretty sure that's just a visual gag, especially given how briefly it's on the screen. I had to share that. Anywho, looking at my notes here. So, they go to... Their language is extremely simplistic. Yeah, it's ooh, 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 ooh. Anyways, it's all binary. They really do like the spa in this show, do they? Don't they? As I point out before, no judgment. I kind of wish I could get a full spa treatment. I have tons of stress, that I retain in my muscles. I can't even remember the last time I had a massage. I can remember the last time I gave a massage. That wasn't even that long ago. But receiving? Nah. Anywho, so no judgment. Although, gross, Spike. For those of you who don't remember, Spike, Rainbow Dash eats one of the cucumbers, just like Applejack. And then Spike pulls the cucumber out of her throat to put back on his eye. Twilight is the first one to point out that the whole gossiping thing might be a bad thing. Now that makes sense. Twilight's usually the adult voice amongst the group, and she's usually used in that particular function within the storytelling. So she points out, I just feel bad about this, and Rainbow Dash is like, nah, I wish I was in the paper. Come on, get a hoofacure. Now, I've actually never had a pedicure, so I don't actually know what that feels like. I have been told by people who get pedicures that it is actually a very relaxing thing. I wouldn't know. Like I said, no judgment. I'd love to get a pedicure, but again, I don't know what that's like. But so they convince Rainbow, and we see the Featherweight, or whatever his name was, in the background with the camera. Nice little bit of foreshadowing. They don't even show the flash. They just show him briefly in the background, and the camera focuses on him for about half a second. So then Rainbow gets the thing. She's like, nope, I'm out. Peace. There's also something amusing. They mention how they do a full interview on Spike. Like, Spike actually mentions he's been interviewed by Gabby Gums, and then they deliver the story. So later on, they're trying to figure out who Gabby Gums is. Why don't they just ask Spike? It's a little thought that occurred to me as I was watching this. But anywho. So yeah, they do a full interview. The interview's rejected. It's also a decent interview. In fact, one of the things I liked about the interview, and I hate to keep bringing this up, but you'll notice how one of the points of the interview was the fact that he was talking about the people in Canterlot and his connections to them. Once again, I think this is like the 6th time now we established that Spike is connected with Canterlot people. I'm not sure when this is going to stop being brought up, because this just keeps coming up. That's another one for the continuity counter. I think the Chamber Road suited him too, very much so. Anywho, so the interview gets rejected, and the kids are standing there, and they're like, were you feeling bad about the gossip too? Uh-huh. I didn't want to say anything, but everyone loves Gabby Gums so much. That line is critical, right there. That line has so many connections to so much of real-life applicability. The most obvious one that probably affects us on a more day-to-day basis is, just because something is popular does not make it good. I admit that's something that bothers me on a literal daily basis. I'm a streamer and kind of a YouTuber. And I am not popular. I mean, don't mistake me. I got you guys, and you guys are awesome. But the harsh truth is, I am not popular. I know the kind of streamers that are popular. I would not call them good. Most of them. Yeah, Greenfall. We just covered that game. That's a good example. Yeah. I could bring up other aspects of real life applicability here. But it is interesting that the child automatically assumes it's okay because the adults all say it's okay. And that's actually, I know this sounds horrible, but that's an important lesson. I actually remember distinctly, I'm not going to share the instance because it's too private, but I remember distinctly the first time I realized that my mother could be wrong. I'm actually curious if any of you know what I'm talking about, because it's that moment of realization. Because it never entered your head before, right? I mean, your parents know everything, because they're the ones who shepherded you and guided you and taught you as you're growing up. And the first time you find out that they're actually demonstrably wrong about something is just kind of a, oh, moment. I have talked to Minnie's aunt about this, absolutely. I have told her flat out, if you think I am wrong, you need to tell me, and you need to explain why. I told her that when she was very young. I've told her that more than once. So, that kind of a lesson is an important lesson. I do like how they kind of touch on that in this episode. Because the episode very clearly slants it that what they're doing is wrong, but it's okay because the adults are okay with it. And that's a good message. I know that sounds so strange. You can tell why I like this episode, I'm sure. Then, as they, the Cutie Mark Crusaders go, and they do the clap thing. This is the first time they've done that clap with just this kind of, right? So, this then leads to them, and they just rapid fire a bunch of gossip, most of which is either lies or bordering on lies. This is when we find out about the hair, and there's this one thing that I found amusing. I need to pull this up, actually. So there's this bit where they say, Big Macintosh, what's he hiding? And he's got a little doll. Is that the doll from Lesson Zero? I'm actually going to pull up Lesson Zero right now, which means I got to mute. No, I'll just do this. Mute. There we go. Oh, mute. There we go. Okay, we got it. Yep, nope, that's the doll. I'm staring at it right now. So yes, that is in fact the doll from Lesson Zero. So not only is that another continuity counter, but it's also kind of an interesting bit in his own right. Why should he have to be embarrassed about having cute little stuffed animals? Why is this embarrassing? It's cute. It was a gift from my sister during Dragon Con. Her name is Om Nom Nom. I kind of... Ignoring that, though. That's the point I'm trying to make, though, with specifically with regards to how adorable Void Yoshi is. He's not actually all that voidy today. Look at that. He actually, you can kind of see him today. Holy crap. Oh, it's just because the background is kind of blending, and that's why. Anyways, here's the real reason I'm bringing up the cute doll thing, because there was the hair extensions, and then there was the dyed hair. And I think there were like 2 or 3... Oh yeah, Celestia also eats cake was another one. But I bring this up because all of the things that they make fun of are things that there's no reason to be embarrassed by. Do you notice that? That can't be a coincidence. Big Macintosh is hiding a cute doll. So? Fluttershy gets tail extensions. So? The mayor dyes her hair gray. So? And again, a good lesson by itself. Right? Then we get into, as I actually already referenced this earlier, but that's when we get into the point of being actual outright lies. Oh yeah, AJ takes a nap during a long day of work on the farm. So? This doesn't apply universally, but there's no need to be ashamed of who you are, right? Like, within reason, I guess is the thing. Yeah, nowadays, those kind of embarrassing secrets can literally ruin people's careers. That's happened. Yeah, Rainbow Dash went to the spa. So? Again, though, I get it. I'm not making fun. That's not the point. I am trying to bring up that the episode itself has made a deliberate point of constantly having this gossipy about things that there's no real flaw in being true. Then it once again moves even forward into outright lies. And as Rasker points out, it's not only inconsequential, but it's slanted. This is the other reason I used the hair dye Savicom example earlier, because who cares if Savicom dyes her hair? But did you know that, oh my god, she has to actually have... her hair is so horrible that she has to dye it. What could possibly be wrong with her? Like, it's the slanting that really makes this bad. Right? Anywho... I can't believe you would dye your hair. Anybody who would dye their hair is truly evil. Man, I wish I had waist long hair. Anyways. Yeah, where's Phoenix? Objection! The point I'm trying to get to, though, is then they get into outright lies. Actual outright lying when it comes to their the things. And the first one is the Cakes are getting divorced. We are?
Of course you follow me. They all do.
And no, of course they aren't. Which is, again, the point. They've gotten to the point where they've run out of idle gossip, so they have to fabricate outright lies. Now, as with all fiction, and I've brought this up many, many, many times, they do kind of push through this a little quickly because 22-minute runtime. Weouds has rather accurately pointed out that that's not as big of a problem as I tend to make it out to be. You're right. But they rush through to get to the point of actual lies, which is also exactly what news media has done and currently does. Publishing literal lies because they're juicy. And I love how they keep using that word because that is so true. Oh, I'm sorry. Is it really today, Vigilant? First of all, thank you very much, Vigilant. Very much obliged and appreciate, sir. Second of all, happy birthday, dude. Congratulations on making it through another year of this frickin' world. As I've said many times, I'm actually really big on birthdays because it's another year you can say that the world didn't beat you. And I know that sounds awfully cynical, but by God, that's a day of celebration as far as I'm concerned. So, happy birthday, Vigilant. Congratulations on telling the world screw you for another year. I lost my train of thought. Right, so outright lies. Get to the point of outright lies. Hi, Mihawk. And this, of course, leads to a big joke. I don't actually know the one, Loner. I know who Al Bundy is, but I don't know the pep speech. This leads to the big joke. Because everyone's upset about Gabby Gums except Rarity, who's like, it's just a bunch of harmless gossip. Until it's posted about it, I'll destroy her! Now, first of all, Tabitha St. Germain is amazing. In other news, water is wet. But the thing is... Okay. Hey, up top, Baronessa. So, this leads to her being like, oh my god, this is horrible. It's portrayed as a joke, but this is itself a lesson. This is itself another lesson. We're up to like 3 or 4 lessons just in this episode. I really like this episode. Because, I'm just going to say my opinion. It's wrong, but it's still true. People tend to be a lot more tolerant of things until it's personal, until it affects them. Obviously, that applies in a lot of ways with regards to, you know, having to have sympathy for someone, or maybe not understanding how bad can get, or, you know, having no sympathy for someone you yourself are deliberately hurting, and blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, that also applies in kind of a more everyday, low-key kind of ways, too. I had a perfect example, and I just lost it. Hang on. Because we as human beings, one of the things I push for a lot in my show is trying to bring things down to a personal, understandable level. It's one of the main reasons I use food as an analogy so often. Because food is one of the very few human constants. Everyone eats. Right? Now, lots and lots of people eat lots of different things, but that just makes the analogy work for a lot of different concepts, right? My point is, I'm trying to make it more understandable for people who maybe haven't thought of it from the right perspective. I've been accused of treating people as if they're stupid, but that's not the intent. Rather, I am trying to effectively force their mentality to shift to, this is happening to me, ergo understanding it on a personal level. Yeah, I mean, the infamous quote, 1 death is a tragedy, 1,000 deaths is a statistic, is true. Horrible, wrong, true. Because people's minds just aren't really wired to comprehend deaths of millions, right? My favorite quote in all of Mass Effect 2 is from Mordin, favorite nephew. Love that. Love that quote. You know what I'm talking about. I'm sure a lot of you have played Mass Effect. You know the scene, you know? Galaxy's a big place. Galaxy's a huge place. Hard to conceptualize, hard to visualize. Not trying to save the galaxy, trying to save my favorite nephew. That's personal, individual. I can comprehend it, I can process it, I can feel, I can care. It's a great scene. But this episode, even though it's being portrayed as a joke, and once again you'll notice the joke is actually being done in character, I'm going to keep pointing that out. Every time it does it right, I'm going to point it out, and every time it does it wrong, I'm going to point it out. But it's an in-character joke because Rarity's totally cool with it until it affects her, which is absolutely true. Oh, sure, Loner. Go ahead. I'm not going to watch it right now. I'll watch it during the in-between, or maybe afterwards when I get home. But I will pull this up and pause. Pause. There we go. Cool. Yeah, she played on that a lot in the episode, but there's a really cool part of that too, and I'm still building up to that, so give me just a moment. So obviously she freaks out, I'll destroy her! And then, of course, yeah, no kidding, Dream Whisperer. If I could just branch off on this topic briefly, it's another reason why realpolitik is a term. For those of you not aware of what realpolitik means, it basically means the idea of removing morality and ethics from political consideration, from like world leaders and chancellors and senators and that kind of a thing. Realpolitik is a concept because it basically tries to break down politics, which is a massively complex, very personal topic, into math. Just breaking it down into math. Cold calculus. There's another quote that I've been using for years from Mass Effect 3. Yeah. Anyways, so Rarity, of course, freaks out. The episode then does yet another smart thing. I really like this episode. I think I'm willing to put this into the purple category. Sorry, I'm color coding the episodes as we go. Like I said, I'm organized, you know me. I color code them based on how much I like them, so I can kind of see how many colors are under which author, you know. Just what? So So she talks to Sweetie Belle. And Sweetie Belle, you know, she says, "It too, Gabby Gums." I know, right, Loner? In mid-sentence. Oh, God, Baronessa. I think I know the video you're talking about. Yeah, anyway, so the Caesar reference, obviousness. But what I love most about this is that she uses her own mistake to teach Sweetie Belle a lesson. Let me rehash that in case I didn't get that point across. The adult tells the child that the adult made a mistake and uses that to try and teach the child. Now that's smart. And that's, in my opinion, as someone who has been a guardian, a caretaker, a correct approach. To admit that you can be flawed and make mistakes, and then try to use those to help teach your child. Because she points out, you know, Sweetie Belle's like, "But you snuck into my bag and you tried to steal my things." And Rarity's immediate response is, "And how did you feel when I did that?" So Sweetie Belle's like, "No, you're right, of course, and I've screwed up and I don't feel bad, but we just really want our cutie marks." Wonderful props to the voice acting in this episode, by the way, because she sounds so crestfallen as she's saying this. Then Rarity says something interesting. Do you really think that this is your destiny? I didn't get the whole quote. It's something about, like, you know, she says, like, do you really think posting things and making people feel bad is your destiny? And Sweetie Belle's like, no. This is, of course, entering the realm of headcanon and theory crafting, but based on everything I keep saying about the harmonic frequency thing, you know, the nature of harmony within this setting, I have a feeling that it's actually impossible to have a cutie mark in making other people feel bad. Because that doesn't fit the pattern. And as portrayed, again, this is entering the realm of theory crafting, a cutie mark is an expression of your position that you have chosen within the pattern. And making other people feel bad doesn't fit the pattern, does it? Hey, Jake the Crazy. Now Bragwin says Diamond Tiara is awfully good at it. I'm glad you brought that up. I mentioned Diamond Tiara gets a little bit of characterization, just the beginnings of it in this episode. The thing is, her making feel people bad is not actually her talent. She actually mentions her talent in this episode. Diplomacy. Her talent is convincing other people. This will actually come up in the future. Her talent, her position within the pattern is to be diplomatic, to have a high charisma check. She is using it to hurt other people because of her mother. Interesting to think about. Which I just think is really, really cool. There's also, so getting back to the episode for a moment, there's this bit where we really see the first time that she actually starts to be legitimately villainous in this episode. And that's the point where she says, I don't care about feelings. I want hard-hitting, gossiping stories, or else blackmail. Now, of course, it's a really low-key level of blackmail, but from Ponyville's perspective, you can see how it is blackmail. I wouldn't disagree, Savacon, but I want to save more of our discussion about Diamond Tiara until the Diamond Tiara episode, which will be like 2 seasons from now, I think. It's a ways from now. So, so she frickin' blackmails them, and they're like, okay. So they're like, all right, let's go try to, you know, get some people. Let's try to... Yeah, you'll notice, actually, Baron does have a good point. Filthy Rich and Spoiled Rich's influence is both felt on Diamond Tiara. Because Filthy Rich is very ambitious. We actually have already heard, as of this point in time, that he has already took basically nothing and used it to build a financial empire, local equivalent, within the area. He worked his way up, is what I'm trying to say. A successful businessman. Spoiled Rich, who we haven't actually met yet, but when we do, well, there's a reason her name is Spoiled. She's not a good person. And we'll talk more about that when we get there, because I do have some thoughts about that. But yeah, I do like how Tiara kind of leads more towards her father, but is also willing to be under the influence of her mother, which makes sense, doesn't it? Trophy wife? Not as bad as the trophy wife, Fleur-de-Lis. Fleur-de-Lis was fine, really. Spoiled Rich is awful. I actually agree with that, Baron Same. But again, let's leave more of our discussions about Spoiled Rich and Diamond Tiara till later, because that is going to come up later. So, the Cutie Mark Crusaders, they decide to go around and try to get info. So they hit each of the main 6 as they're trying to get more stories. Rainbow Dash just pours rain on them. Fluttershy is sobbing. I actually don't remember Lord Harriman. And again, I don't want to get too much into that right now, because we're not there yet. I suppose I can look it up really quick. Her cutie mark is, dramatic pause, a, looks like a diamond ring. Apparently, one of her birth name was Milk. So her name at birth was Spoiled Milk. She'll come up in season 5, by the way, is when we'll actually be discussing that. She apparently comes up after that, too. That's neat. Anyways, not an invalid point, Lord Harrowmont, but let's save that discussion for later. That is a good thing, but let's get there when we get there. So, Fluttershy is sobbing. I think more than anything, that shot right there of showing Fluttershy, who is, you know, Fluttershy, sobbing because of how much she's hurt by their gossip, really nails home the point of the whole personal message that I talked about earlier. It's okay until it's you, until you feel it. So yeah, poor Fluttershy is just, oh my god. Twilight actually put up a force field to not let them in, which I believe is the first time we've seen that force field, and it will not be the last time. I could be wrong about that. We'll see. I already mentioned Rainbow Dash, and there's this nice little bit where Applejack and Big Mac swap roles, because all Applejack, excuse me, says is nope and yep, and Big Mac is the one who gives the big speech to them. Nice little touch there. Wouldn't have worked in season 1, because back then he just talked normally, but anywho. So, this is so fascinating, because the next thing that happens is a bit of a montage of them walking through town and everyone shunning them. Now, we've actually already covered this point, but this really drives home the point here. It was everyone in town was eating up the gossip until it was about them. They wanted this. Everyone, it was super popular. It was selling like crazy. The local city newsstand wanted the school's paper because everyone wanted to eat up the gossip. But now that it's about them, oh, hypocrisy is what that's called. But again, it doesn't make it right, but it does make it true. That's why I made that distinction earlier. That is so damn true. I know so many people who are totally cool with something until it happens to them. And that applies like across the board. I've seen that in school. I've seen that in work. I've seen that in terms of politics. I'm okay with such and such a bill. Well, it'll affect you. Oh my god, that's unacceptable. I've heard that before. It's actually one of the reasons I have a little private rule that I'm not willing to do to someone else anything that I'm not willing to have done to me. Although I will admit that's not a lesson I got until about my mid-20s. So I was one of those idiots too, which I'm admittedly embarrassed to admit. So, this is actually the point of the episode where Tiara brings up her diplomatic skills, which I mentioned earlier. Right after that, they post their apology letter, which they play over a montage. And I kind of like this bit because it's a sincere apology. And it's the good kind of apology, because it's an apology that says, we made a mistake, we own up to the mistake, and we're sorry for the mistake. Those, in my opinion, are the 3 key points of an apology right there. You don't say you're sorry to make everything better. You don't say you're sorry because you want to be forgiven. You don't say you're sorry because it's not my fault. You do the exact opposite of all 3 of those things. I screwed up. I did it. I'm sorry. And they hit all 3 of those points of a good apology, which is really awesome, actually, that they bothered to show that. So I think we're up to 5 lessons in this episode now. People do forgive them, but forgiving someone who gives a sincere apology is a lot easier than someone who doesn't, so I'm kind of okay with that. Yeah, it's not a corporate apology, which does none of the 3 things I just mentioned. God. And then Tiara slips, and there's a boom, boom right at the end. So, unfortunately, as much as I do love this episode, we do have to add a wah-wah, because that is so clearly a wah-wah. And we regret that certain players did not enjoy this game. That's not how that works. Anyways. And we've reached the end of the episode, so hang on. So the continuity counter... I can talk. The continuity counter went up a couple. So we'll go ahead and adjust that. Wah-wah went up 1. Frickin' Mass Effect 3. That was one of the first things that I started talking about in this show. Was how one of the things that pissed me off was not so much the Mass Effect 3 ending, which was bad, but the response to the being upset at the ending. You remember that all the way back? I had a lot more hair. I was still trying out different styles. So I hadn't actually settled on the straight thing yet. I was just sitting there during work on my laptop talking about how it pissed me off that they were acting like it was our fault for not liking their game. It wasn't a real apology. Yeah, the word entitled kept being thrown around. It was the worst. It's the worst friggin' thing they could have done. The Mass Effect 3 ending has entered popular culture because of their reaction to it. Anyways, you just don't understand how artistic this is. Oh, I know, Shikor. What's wrong with those people? Ah. Yeah, no kidding, Weods. It has gotten worse. I will actually agree with that. It has gotten bad. Anywho, that is all I've got for this episode. So I'm going to go ahead and chop off the local recording.